Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You have the right to remain well entertained. If, instead of rebooting movies, it became a trend to retell them from a different character's perspective, what film would you want to see retold and from whose point of view? The Matrix from Agent Smith's view. Constantly trying to quell the stupid human insurrection. I was going to say The Matrix from Morpheus' point of view. The prequel being how he learns of the One and getting his band of folks to find Neo. I'd actually like to see The Matrix from Cypher's point of view. Spoiler: the path that leads his bitterness and resentment to betray everyone, obviously the climax of the film being his failure and death. I dig how you used spoiler font for a 20-year-old movie. Mean Girls, as told by Regina George. This could also go dark. Her home life was obviously messed up. What was growing up in that household like? Imagine Regina flashbacks. Have you felt her mom's boobs? They're hard as rocks. I heard her mom starred in porno movies, in Japan. Matrix, but from the perspective of a regular police detective trying to stop the murder spree of these crazy people who kill everybody without reason. At one point he would interrogate Neo. That sounds like it could be exceptionally fun if the cop in question begins to learn to bend the rules of the Matrix. He is exposed to enough of the rebels' antics to believe and seek out the truth and how to use/experience it, but still decidedly falls on the side of people still living in the system, defending the innocents who are callously overlooked in this higher-level war. They mostly get their donkey kicked, but manage to save just enough people, just enough of the time, to maintain a morale and sense of purpose. Later on, the Smith virus takes hold and they desperately try to create a hidden community in this world, meant to parallel the rebels' colony in the Rhea/world, and just as that begins to hopelessly fall in upon itself, the final fight ensues upon Neo's return. The story of how Grandpa Joe got into bed and then decided to just stay there, the lazy old runt. Explain yourself. R/Grandpa Giat. What the actual duck? I thought this would only have a few hundred people joined and only posts from years past. Ender's Shadow did this exact thing with Ender's Game, done by the original author, no less, and it is brilliant. The whole Shadow series is seriously one of the best stories I've ever read. Series? I know only the first book. You're saying there were more? Or are you referring to the speaker for the dead stuff? Toy Story. Andy, a young boy who enjoys playing with his toys in his spare time, often wanders into his room to find things off. Something may have moved, a toy may have vanished only to reappear the next day. Voices are heard from his room from the ground floor only to hear a slight panic, then silence whenever he approaches the room again. And imagine, one day, if he heard this talking once again only to walk into his room, hear the split-second shock to silence just to see his favorite cowboy toy laying on the floor. Only this time, just before he laid his eyes on the toy, he could see in the corner of his eye the left hand of Woody just slightly flop to the ground. Flop to the ground as if he just fell. But, how could a toy fall if it was laying on the ground to begin with? That's if it was laying on the ground the whole time. He begins to think that he is never truly alone in his room anymore, and those beady toy eyes that face him in the night while he's sleeping aren't just facing him out of chance. They're watching him. They're looking. And he isn't alone. Nor was he ever alone. This is the tale of a boy who loses his mind at the thought that he has never been alone for his entire life, and that the friends he made growing up may be a little more real than he first thought. It's a Wonderful Life from Mary, the wife's point of view. Married to a dreamer with fits of depression, while raising 4 kids, rebuilding a beautiful old Victoria house, helping him make his dream of helping his community come true, and trying to protect him from his loser uncle, all while watching him spiral into a deeper and deeper depression. Will she be able to help him out of it? Rather than an obligation. I'd say more of a sense of duty than an obligation, but anyway, it's semantics to me. Yes, it wasn't the dream he sacrificed, but it was his life's work, and people do have dreams to be a certain kind of person and do good in the world. From Mary's POV, I do think she was helping him fulfill his dream to have a fulfilling life. His romantic dreaming to travel and be an engineer were all fueled by wanting to have a fulfilling life. Star Wars from the Empire's POV, basically telling the story about this terrorist group that was planning the biggest act of terrorism in the galaxy's history, the destruction of a military peacekeeping starbase. We follow the Empire's anti-terrorism unit as they try to find the spies transporting the stolen plans and head off the attack. Not a retelling of any of the movies, But there was a Star Wars novel in the 90s where each chapter retold the same story from a different character's point of view, with most chapters extending the story and occasionally introducing new characters, who then got a turn in the spotlight in a later chapter. It was my favorite Star Wars novel. Willy Wonka from the point of view of an Oompa Loompa who is working to ignite a slave rebellion amongst his people. Oompa Loompa Doopity Dad sees the means of production, comrade. Oompa Loompa Dooba Dee Doo, who benefits from the labor we do? We organize to vouch for our few, then Willy candied the head of our crew. We still live and work for him too, solidarity's our only way through. Oompa Loompa Dooba Dee Dee, fight the man so someday we're free. John Wick would become a horror film. There's a couple scenes where he just comes off as this horrible unstoppable machine, a whole movie of that would be wild. Foot soldiers pissing themselves because they know Wick is gonna murk them but they have no option but to die fighting. I still like the part where he talks to the one bodyguard casually then ends it with why don't you take the night off and they reply I think I will. He knows exactly what is about to go down and he just nopes the duck out without hesitation. Any action movie from the perspective of a goon, a random, unimportant member of an evil force who would in any typical scenario serve as just another body the protagonist would blow away. He might not be the mastermind but he has a name, face below that mask, his own story, his family, and he will protect that murky warehouse for his boss as long as he has bullets in his MP5, even if he isn't that much of a sharpshooter. Reminds me of the premise of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It takes these two background characters from Hamlet and creates a really interesting surreal story. It's been a long time since I've read/seen it, so I'm sure I'm doing it no justice here. It's a great play by Tom Stoppard, made into a superb film written and directed by Tom Stoppard, starring Gary Oldman and Tim Roth as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Frozone? Where was his super suit? Frozone and his wife as a romantic comedy. Is she super? Is she ordinary? Does that make the least difference to her? Just keep the gag of never showing her on screen. But still make the entire movie cantered around her. Jurassic Park Lost World, except from Ingen's perspective. Jurassic Park from the Velociraptor's perspective. He's right. I'm a clever girl. Alan. Forrest Gump from Jenny's perspective. That would be so depressing. But would probably be such a sweet portrayal of Forrest's pure love to her in contrast to all the other poop she has to go through, and we will get a good inner dialogue of how she finds it difficult to respond to that emotion for most of her life. Saving Private Ryan from Private Ryan's point of view. It's most just him slogging in the army until Captain Miller shows up. I never really got why they sacrificed a whole toddy-earned squad of men to save him. Was there some sort of moral I missed? I want to know R2-D2's perspectives. He swears too much. R2-D2 really puts the R in the R age rating. And the D in BB-8. Wait, different timeline. That crazy guy from Bird Box who forced people's eyes open. Seriously, I want a story about what he actually saw and why he wanted people to see it so bad. They had an idea for the monster in mind and originally planned to reveal it, but it's probably best they didn't. It was basically a giant green baby. That's not what he saw though. He saw what they made him see and it was something so amazing it drove him mad. Hot Fuzz but from the perspective of the neighborhood watch. From the perspective of the swan. Fascist. Hag. The Lion King from Skarsgård. There's already precedent for doing this to Lion King. Lion King 1.5 is Timon and Pumbaa's full story, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love that movie simply because it continues the Hamlet comparison. If Lion King is Hamlet, then Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Plus Lion King 2 is Romeo and Juliet. Mulan from Captain Li Shang's point of view. He starts having feelings for one of his soldiers, thinking he's gay. Then he finds out that Ping is actually a girl in disguise. Good news, I'm not gay. Bad news, I'm supposed to chop her head off. There is a Chinese story similar to this called Butterfly Lovers and there is an old musical version of it. I mean, there's a Chinese girl in disguise, but I don't know if you'd say that it's similar. He doesn't have to chop off his head, he's just too dirt poor to marry the girl. Then he dies of heartache or some bullpoop. Then she dies because she's becoming a butterfly to join him. It's a bit more Romeo and Juliet with poor versus rich instead of feuding clans emo. Lord of the Rings trilogy from Sauron's perspective. 1. Your order has been dispatched. Unfortunately it is delayed due to being misplaced in transit. 2. Your order is out for delivery. Please be in between the hours of November and January to sign for your package. 3. Your delivery has been placed in a safe place. Despite being home, I did not hear the bell, and oh no. It's been tossed over the back wall and ended up in my pond, LOTR from Tom Bombadil's perspective. Just a 3-part trilogy of a dude in the woods playing with squirrels and picking flowers for his forest lady friend. Fight Club from the view of Marla. I would love the story to be retold from any POV so I could watch Ed Norton punch himself over and over again for 2 hours. Pretty much the only thing I never got was when he was fighting himself outside the bar and some guy goes, "Can I go next?" Like, he was asking permission to fight himself after the crazy guy was done? Top Gun from Iceman's perspective. Maverick's the a-hole in that movie. Maverick is the butthole in the original movie too. The plot of just about every 80s Tom Cruise movie is that he's a cocky anus who meets a hot chick and somehow becomes a better person by the end of the movie. Oh dang, that's the plot of the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds movie. Except replace hot chick with aliens. Alien. Predator story as well for me. At least the predators are sentient. Could be interesting to get a better look into their species. You know, from a good movie. Every time I watch one of the Predator movies I can't help but imagine nerd predators and accountants predators and waste removal predators and predators who work at Predator gas stations and all those things. Like maybe the predators that we see in the movies are like to minority and look down on group. Beauty and the Beast from Gaston's perspective. They show him as a lad eating 4 dozen eggs every morning to help him get large. Don't be ridiculous. Now that he's grown, he eats 5 dozen eggs, so he's roughly the size of a barge. Surely after he dies, the price of eggs in their poor provincial town drops since the demand lessened and now that lady can afford 6. I just reread Hunger Games and PETA, Haymitch, Finnick, where Cinna's perspectives would be fun. Katniss is very inside herself and so the movies are more open to the reality of the situation than the books. I'd like a Harry Potter story from the last year at Hogwarts when the trio wasn't there, like maybe Ginny and Neville. Pepper Potts from the MCU could be fun. A movie about Haymitch and his Hunger Games would be amazing. I find his story a lot more interesting than Katniss. Captain America, First Avenger, Captain America, Winter Soldier told in Bucky's POV. Or First Avenger from Howard Stark's point of view. We could see him meet the Doctor, build the machine, get that Wakanda material and then post the Captain, find the Tesseract while searching for him. It could even have multiple movies, jumping ahead to the point where Tony is born up until the point where Howard dies. Twilight, from the father's view. It would actually be interesting, and not derivative smutty poop. Supernatural creatures seem to be lusting for this man's daughter, as he tries to research everything he can, keep it secret from his daughter, who's obviously under the sway of supernatural influence, therefore cannot be trusted. He collects evidence, tries to prove it to fringe people, and eventually rational scientists, all while unearthing an ever deeper and more terrifying secret society of actual blood-drinking vampires that controls the globe. I'd watch the frick out of that. Twilight told from literally anyone else's perspective would be an improvement. Toy Story 3 from What's-His-Face's perspective, the big pink teddy bear, Lotso I think. R/Ifio Lotso. For a second I honestly believed this was a real sub, and it wouldn't have surprised me a mao. I really need Weekend at Bernie's from Bernie's POV. He's not actually dead yet, just in a near-death paralysis. And these buttholes just keep dressing him up instead of taking him to a hospital. He's not actually dead yet, just in a near-death paralysis. They shot him through the skull with a harpoon and left him at the bottom of the ocean. With weird music. How exactly is he still alive? Harry Potter from Hermione's perspective? I'd like to see it from Neville Longbottom's view. The child who could have been the chosen one. I'd love to find out more about his family, if his life was as terrible as living with the Dursleys, about find friends who actually liked him and treated him well. Plus the fact that he also killed the last known Horcrux. Harry Potter and the Life of Brian. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.